Well, hello again. Welcome back to the kitchen. This is another episode of Cooking with Aron, and it's the holiday time, so what better way to celebrate the holidays than by baking some chocolate chip cookies. However, tomorrow happens to be Thanksgiving, and remember, Christmas and Hanukkah are coming up soon. Why don't you actually make some different cookies than just chocolate chip cookies? I have to bring about 4 dozen cookies over to someone's house tomorrow. Instead of making all the same cookie, I figured, why not make 4 batches of slightly different cookies? They're all going to be variations of chocolate chip, but we can add things like walnuts or M&Ms or other stuff in it. In fact, we might even make a chocolate chip cookie. So let's see what's required to make that stuff. Let's start out with the basic ingredients you need for a regular chocolate chip cookie. First of all, make sure you get some measuring cups, teaspoons. Obviously, you need some chocolate chips here. Also, you're going to want butter, which can be room temperature. That would be optimum. However, we're going to actually zap this in the microwave. You're going to need a mixing bowl. I use plastic. You're going to need a hand mixer or electric mixer. You're going to need some flour. This bad boy right here, flour. Vanilla extract. White sugar. Light brown sugar. This is actually optional. You can actually use regular sugar. However, adding brown sugar adds a little more depth. And baking soda. Oh, you'll also need one more thing, which I will get in right now. Very important. Eggs. Eggs. You also need an egg. And that goes over the basic ingredients that you need for a basic chocolate chip cookie. Now that you have the basics out of the way, let's go into the optional stuff. If you want to make the same cookies, that's fine. If you want to make more than 12, each one of these things I'm going to do are 12 cookies, basically. Obviously, if you make them a little larger, they're going to be less than 12. If you make them a little smaller, they're going to be more than 12. Now, if you want to actually add some variations, you should pick up some baking cocoa. Just cocoa, don't add anything else to it, regular cocoa. You can add walnuts right here, or any kind of nuts. M&Ms, and chocolate pieces, like Hershey bars, crackle, whatever. You could add them right into the cookie as well. So those are the variations that we're going to be doing today. And let's get into this bad boy right now. Before I reposition the camera to actually show you what I'm going to be putting into the actual batter, let me just go over the ingredient lists. So I've told you what's the actual stuff inside the cookie. Now let's go over the amounts. Basic chocolate chip cookies, if you want to make a dozen, requires 1 stick of salted butter. Now, you can actually put more salt in it if you want. However, I don't feel the need to put more salt in it. Let's face it, everybody's got too much salt in their diet already. So, 1 stick of salted butter. You're going to need a half a cup of white sugar, a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, light brown sugar, packed. Make sure it's got that 1/4 cup in there. You want the sweetness. This is a cookie after all. You want about 3/4 cup of chocolate morsels. You want about 1½ cups of flour. Now this is very important. The dough itself, you have to actually handle the dough to make sure that it's the right consistency. So I would start out with 1¼ cup of flours and then add more flour as it goes to make sure that the consistency is correct. I'll show you actually in the video what I mean by consistency. If you put less flour in, it's going to be runny dough, and then you're going to have these like flat cookies that don't actually have any like nice soft cookiness to it. They'll just be these flat pancakes of sweet cookies, which isn't bad, except it isn't good. If you put too much flour, you're going to have this basically sweet bread. You don't want that either. And that's basically it for those ingredients. You also need a ½ teaspoon of baking soda. ½ teaspoon, just dump some in, and you'll basically get it. It's not that big of a deal. And a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Very important. Vanilla adds a lot of stuff to baking. So make sure you got all that stuff on hand. And if I forgot anything, we're going to go through it through the video anyway. So let's reposition the camera over the bowl, and we'll see what's going on. So before we actually start getting this stuff prepared, we're going to open this butter up. And since I'm making 4 batches, I'll just leave the butter out. However, since I took it right out of the fridge right now, it's pretty hard. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this up and plop it in to the, oh, it's already getting soft. which is fine. This is exactly what you want. You want room temperature butter, basically. So a lot of recipes will actually call for butter that's liquidy, and you really don't want liquidy. You basically want a lot of butter on there. But that's okay. I'll just throw this bad boy away. Excuse me. So like I was saying, you basically want butter that's soft. Not room temperature, but soft. Also, since we're starting this out, let's preheat the oven to 350. Now that we've preheated the oven, we're ready to continue. Before we actually melt this butter, and I know it's a long process, before we actually get this butter softened, what we're going to do is we're going to measure out our sugar. So we need a 1/4 of a cup of light brown sugar and a 1/2 cup of white sugar. Measure it out. You can put it all in the same container, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to cream the sugar with the butter. So once we soften the butter up, we're just going to blend in the actual sugar a little bit at a time so it gets nice and whipped and creamy. And that's basically what creaming butter means. It means whipping it up. Now I have my sugar all ready to go. If you have brown sugar, like I do, that's been stored for a while, it's going to be chunky and all hard and stuff. So basically just, you can break that up with your hand. If it's already in the batter and it's got chunks in it, just get a fork and start to just, mash it together. Because basically you don't want it to be chunky, you want it to be nice and granulated. So this butter is not soft yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it in the microwave. In the center of the microwave. We're going to put it on for 20 seconds just to see if it's nice and melted, and then I'll reposition the camera and show you the bowl itself. So, let's see here. 10 seconds going by. Wait for a little bit more. Let's try 15, see how that looks. We just want it to be soft. There we go. And you can see that it's soft and it's, let's see here. See, it's soft and slightly melted already. That's pretty much good to go. So we're going to reposition the camera, and now I will show you the rest of the stuff. Here we go. Now that I have everything all prepared, we're going to make sure our blender works, or our mixer. Great. And I know it's going to be pretty loud, so I'll stop it midway. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to start mixing this butter up, and then putting this sugar in here a little bit at a time. And then right after, we're going to be blending the egg in, whipping the egg in, just enough to incorporate it so it gets fluffy. You don't want to get it too stiff because then the cookies will turn out to be a little harder. And then we'll start putting the other dry ingredients in. So I'll tell you every step of the way. So let's just see how fast we can do this. This is the part where if you see I've got these chunky brown pieces in there, you're going to want to take a fork and just really break them apart. You know, I did it with my hand before, it doesn't matter. So we're just going to break them apart. If you had fresh brown sugar, this would not happen. However, the molasses is really solidifying, and that's what's causing this. The other good tool to have, notice the oven is preheated. The other good tool to have is a spatula. Oh, and you also need a baking sheet. I didn't mention before. You may or may not need parchment paper. You don't need to put it on the actual baking sheet if you don't want to. The cookies come out fine, but if you have parchment paper, it doesn't really matter. So just make sure that these chunks are broken up, and then we'll move on to the next step. Now that you have the butter all creamed with the sugar, I'm going to add the egg in, and we're going to add the vanilla extract in. So you can add the extract in. Let's do the egg first. I cracked it once on the actual. Oh, you can't even see this. Let's move this over. I cracked the egg once on this, and then it fell right through. So try to not crack the egg where it's gonna like fall through. So just right on the side here. Try not to get any shell in there. Boom. There you go. Let's get this out of the way. And we'll just mix that, and we'll incorporate that in. And that's incorporated. And now we'll take our vanilla extract. Put a teaspoon in there. Okay. Put a little bit more, it's okay. Vanilla's good. Nothing wrong with vanilla. And that's going to incorporate this. And now that's the wet ingredients. Now we're going to add the dry ingredients. Just like you were creaming the butter with the sugar, you're going to do the same thing with the flour. So halfway through, you're also going to add in the baking soda. So here we go, let's do this. Alright, that's half a cup, probably a little bit more than half a cup of flour. Now the second half a cup now. Second half a cup, and now we're going to start to easily put stuff in. So now we're going to put half a teaspoon of baking soda in here. So I'm just going to take my baking soda. That's about half a teaspoon. Now we're going to make sure, this is the most important step. You're going to have to make sure the consistency of the dough is correct. So I'll show you what the consistency looks like. Right now it's wet. Now, that was about 1.5 cups of flour, and as you can see, the dough is still pretty wet. almost workable. So we're going to put a little bit more flour in and then call it. That's fine. Here we go. Now let's see here. That feels pretty good. This is where you start using your hands. Let's go in with our hands. Just make sure the dough feels good. If you ever made bread, you'll know what like dough feels like. And this feels like a very wet, sticky dough, but it's pliable. It doesn't fall apart. You can hold it. See how it molds pretty well. And that's what you're looking for in a cookie dough. You don't want it to be runny, you don't want it to be watery, so you want it to be just like this consistency. And it's pulling apart. This is good dough right here. So, once you got this dough ball, this is the basic chocolate chip cookie dough that you have, that you want to use. And then you can incorporate anything once you have this base. This base is what's important. So, at this point, if you wanted to put in walnuts, you could do that. If you want to put in M&Ms, you could do that. However, on this one, we're only going to put in chocolate chips, because that's what we're going to do. And I'm not going to measure it. Just going to put it in there. Yeah, put it all in there. So that's definitely not enough. Just get that in there, incorporate it all. See if that's good. Now, I like a lot of chocolate chips in my cookies. So, just get that incorporated. Yeah, that's a lot of chocolate chips in that. But that's okay. There, see? Now you got chocolate chip cookie dough. Now the good stuff, just make sure that it's all evenly incorporated. Pretty evenly incorporated now. Okay. Now at this point, you can actually freeze this dough if you roll it out. You can refrigerate it for later use. So if you wanted to actually store this dough, you can. If you're going to freeze it, I suggest that you actually roll it into, like maybe a 1-inch roll, and then you can actually slice it and then put it on a sheet when you're ready to bake it. This is the consistency that you're looking at now, basically. Big, giant cookie dough. And of course, you just want to eat this right now. Good stuff. Did I mention making cookies makes a mess? Because it just does. Now that you have your ball of cookie, we're going to just put a little bit on each spot on this tin. It could be like, this size. Depends what kind of size cookie you want to make. Boom, put this, it's basically like if you took a teaspoon, basically that size. These will probably make slightly smaller cookies, but that's okay. I'll make some slightly bigger ones too. You want to make sure you give them enough space so they spread out, because they'll spread out basically. Once they start to heat up a little bit, they'll actually become a lot more liquidy, and then the magic happens. So just make sure that this is here. We'll put 12 on this one right now. Make some bigger ones here. And you just keep doing this until your cookie sheet is filled. This is my 12 chocolate chip cookies ready to be put in the oven. We're just going to slap them in and let them cook. As you can see, I probably could have used more because I have this little extra bit of dough left. However, that's fine because now I'm going to make a second batch of this cookie and make them really tiny, like you're going to have really tiny cookies. So I'll make a second run of these, and then I'll actually make my other batches that I need for walnuts or M&Ms and such like that. And I'll show you the variations in line with the video, but the recipe's the same. The only thing that I'm going to show you more in depth is the chocolate chip ones. So let's pop these in the oven and see what happens. Afterwards, you're going to need a wire rack to cool these. But let's just throw them in the oven. Now, I want to show you the variation now. So we've got some cocoa. We're going to put in half a cup of cocoa. These are going to be the double chocolate cookies, or I like to call them chocolate chip. So we'll just scoop in. I have my batter with the egg and the vanilla and the butter creamed with the sugar and stuff already. So now we're just going to do the dry ingredients. So we're going to do the cocoa first. That was a half a cup of cocoa. Now we're gonna do the remaining flour, and for the flour, you're gonna have to eyeball this. I think it's going to be about a cup of flour now. So let's see if it's gonna be a cup of flour. Oh, gotta put in our baking soda. It's my measurement of half a teaspoon. Get my measurement of a half a cup of flour ready to go. Here we go. That was half a cup. Let's do another half a cup and see where we are. At this point, you want to scrape down the sides with the spatula. Make sure get everything in there. Cocoa makes it dough a little bit more sticky. It's got extra fat in the cocoa, obviously. I don't know if it's obvious, actually. Dough is still a little wet. Boy, doesn't that good? It looks good to lick, doesn't it? Ooh. So we're going to add a little bit more flour just to get the consistency up. I don't think you need much more than what we got now, so I'm just going to probably put in another, little, until it basically gets to that consistency that we had before. So let's see what we can do here. let's see what we got going on here. It's still a little bit wetter than I would like, so I'll just put a little bit more in and that should be good to go. So I would say I put in 1 1/4 cups of flour on this one. Yours may vary based on humidity in the air and everything. Okay, let's see if this works. It's pulling away from the edges. It's a little soft on the bottom still, but the extra cocoa is going to make it that way. So I think we still need a little bit more flour. There we go. And then we're going to call it. See. Oh, now it's pulling away and everything. That's the consistency that you want to see. And with that, now you can do whatever you want. This is your basic dough for chocolate chip cookies. You could put in walnuts in here. You could put in chocolate chips. You could put in milk chocolate if you want to make it really, really crazy. Generally, I don't suggest putting milk chocolate things into a cookie. The bittersweet actually cuts down the sweetness of the actual cookie itself, because the cookie itself is quite sweet, so there's no reason to put milk chocolate in. But you can see that the dough basically is the same consistency. It molds. It's not that wet, and that's it. There you have it. That's the chocolate chip cookie dough. Now let's see how they're doing. Oh, they're looking pretty good. So you want to make sure about 8 to 10 minutes you're checking these, so you want to make sure that they are nice and getting brown on the edges, and then you just take them out and let them cool off on the tray for about 2 minutes. These are all done. We're just going to let them rest for 2 minutes, and then we'll put them on a wire rack. So the cookies have rested now, and we're going to move them over to this wire rack right now. Here they are on the wire rack. They're going to cool off completely now. I would let them cool off for at least 15-20 minutes before you really start breaking them in. You can see that they're nicely baked. And just let them cool off. They'll solidify a little bit more. Right now they're pretty soft. No, they're not that soft, but they're soft inside, trust me. And with that, that's basically how you make generic chocolate chip cookies with the variants that I showed you. This is the final result. These are actually chocolate chip walnut cookies. You can see one of my chocolate chip. These are regular chocolate chip and chocolate walnuts. Got a whole bunch of them. 3 layers so far. And if I come over here, more are being made, and I got one more batch in the oven. And that's how you make basic chocolate chip cookies with the variations that I've shown you. All that's left to do is to clean up, which I've done while I was actually putting stuff in the oven, and to test one. Now let's test the cookie. I'm going to test this double chocolate one. Oh yeah. This cookie's nice and soft. Alright. There's really not much more that I can say other than just give it a shot. They're really easy to make. It's a fun activity if you have kids. I don't yet. So, whatever. But if you got kids, this is a fun activity. It doesn't take too much time. Most of the time is actually the prep work, the baking, and the cleaning. And, you know, you could probably do this in 30-40 minutes, and all said and done, you're good to go. Great cookies you make. They're homemade. The kitchen smells like it's a bakery. And really, what else do you want than freshly baked cookies? So remember, tomorrow's Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And if you like cookies, go ahead and make some. Thanks a lot, everybody. See you in the next one.